The Mike McDaniel countdown has been put on hold for a week, but will it stay on hold after Sunday's game at Atlanta? What's going on, Dolphins fans? Welcome to this week's edition of Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. I am Chris Perkins, your host, your Miami Dolphins columnist for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. That is Dave Hyde, your columnist for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. Hyde, did you think we would be at this place, 1-6, and wondering about Mike McDaniel's job security? My goodness.
At 0-3, I did. At July 1st, I didn't. I didn't think I didn't think this would be on the table, and I certainly wished it wasn't on the table because we've been here. So there's some muscle memory involved in this from previous seasons where you're wondering, is he going to make it? And then he's not going to make it. And when do they, what do they, how do they, who do they replace? So we're all the same questions, and they're all ugly.
Yeah, there's scars and scar tissue and calluses and just all kinds of things here, Hyde. And here we are again. We'd like to welcome all of our viewers watching this show on YouTube. We want to remind you that if you miss any part of this show, you can catch the podcast on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We would also like you to know that you can catch our weekly newsletter, The Fins Flash, by scanning the QR code that is being shown on your screen. And we also want our viewers to leave something in our chat, a thought, a question, a comment. It is the best place to get intelligent Dolphins conversation. So Dave Hyde, what we're going to talk about today is why hasn't Mike McDaniel been fired? What's going on with Tua, 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions? My goodness. And then when is it time to turn the page and look ahead for this Dolphins team? At 1-6, you would think that this season is pretty much over. So there you go. Look at that, baby. Visual. That graphics department is paying off for us, baby. The props. I like it. So we're going to talk about all of that and more. As we always say on here, there's an ocean of possibilities. Let's dive in. All right, Hyde. So the question, why hasn't Mike McDaniel been fired? McDaniel is now a 500 coach in the regular season with the Dolphins. He's 29-29. He's 29-31 overall, including his 0-2 record in the playoffs. I think I do have one reason that Mike McDaniel has not been fired yet. Steve Ross, you know that he wants to exercise some patience. He doesn't want to cycle through coaches one after the next, after 3 years, after 4 years. He also likes the unity in the building that Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel have brought. Everybody's pulling on the same rope. Having said all of that, it's a losing venture, Hyde. I don't know what he's doing here. And I'll say this. I do think that right now, it's time to make the change. And the number one reason I think that players need to hear a different voice. The number two reason is I think that Steve Ross needs to show players, fans, people in that building that he's not tone deaf, that he recognizes that there's a problem here and that he's doing something to correct the problem. So a few weeks ago, I wasn't sure. All I had said was Mike McDaniel shouldn't come back next season. Now I'm saying I think this is the time to make the coaching change. When do you think it's time? Why do you think it hasn't been done yet?
Well, I don't think it's been done yet. It's hard to get into Steve Ross's mind, why he brought, we can go back, Joe Philbin back, why he fired Brian Flores, why he brought McDaniel and Grier back this year. I mean, there are some things that I would have done differently. But two reasons, I think. One is just that he's patient, as you mentioned. And the second, you want to give the interim coach, whoever that is, and there you go. That's another issue. Who is going to be the interim coach? But whoever it would be, give him a fair chance. And the fair chance isn't going to Atlanta against the number one rushing defense or number one rushing offense and number one defense for yardage and top 10 in scoring and expect anything different than what you've seen. without really any chance to practice. So you look for breaks in the season. One is after the following game against Buffalo, where they play on a Thursday night. They'd have an extended week. I think that would be a landing spot, or after the bye in another month. And I got to be honest, I can't see a big change coming from a coaching change right now. The interim coaching typically works, helps for a week, maybe two, as emotions change, but then you settle into the roster. What you have is what you have. And I will say, if McDaniel goes, Greer should go immediately at the same time, because I've always thought they're joined at the hip. That was a partnership. And for as Mike's got a lot of questions because of a 1-6 season, but Greer to me has the equal amount of questions in how they got here.
Yeah, I would agree that Greer has got to go. And look, the midseason GM change is not common in the NFL, but these aren't common times for the Dolphins. So I wouldn't have a problem with that. They do have an assistant GM, Marvin Allen, who could take over for the rest of the year. And then at the end of the year, you conduct a big search for a new GM and for a new head coach.
We've been there before Perk. We've seen it all, haven't we?
We have. I know it, man. We've got the scars to prove it. When you talk about making a change here, there's been the exception that Steve Ross has put out that he wants to be patient with Mike McDaniel, except if fans stop showing up. We did see in the last home game against the Chargers like patches of 6 or 8 empty seats, mostly in the upper deck. If they lose against Atlanta, they play 4 days after that, Thursday night at home against Baltimore. I think you would see even more empty seats in that game. And then at that point, I wonder if it gets driven home to Steve Ross that, hey, the fans have kind of quit on this team. I had a friend of mine, Hyde, who told me that this season, his season tickets went up from $275 a piece in 2024 to $500 a piece in 2025. And he said season ticket renewal time is coming up in about a month. Is that something that could spur Steve Ross? If there are empty seats against Baltimore and season ticket renewal time coming up on the heels of the Baltimore game, is that something that could spur Steve Ross into action, immediate action, do you think?
I guess we have to take him at his word, right? I mean, I thought it was a kind of an odd thing to say in the statement that fans showing up to games would be something that thumbs up or thumb. It's like the Roman Coliseum. How many thumbs up, how many thumbs down? But I'll take him at his word that if fans don't show up, that will play into the decision. But again, I said Buffalo on Thursday, but yeah, it's Baltimore. They play on Thursday, and again, I come to spots where you want to give the interim coach a chance to change the direction of a little of the team and the season and the emotion inside the team a little. And, just a normal work week is probably too tight to do that. But, desperate times, desperate measures. The question becomes, Perk, what do you think? Do you ride out the season like this? You said fire him now, so I guess you're against that. This would be the most organic tank of them all.
It would. To me, you don't make the change because you have hopes of reviving the season. You make the change because players have stopped listening to Mike McDaniel. The last 2 losses, you blow a 17-0 lead at Carolina, one of the worst teams in the league. Then the last game, you lose the lead in the final minute of the game, the last 46 seconds or whatever it was. What's it going to be this week? How much lower can it get? I have said that I think that the players like Mike McDaniel. I think the players respect Mike McDaniel, but at some point the players are going to stop listening to Mike McDaniel. I think we're at that point. I think we've seen the last couple of weeks the shoddy play that we saw last week, Hyde, errors in offense, defense, special teams. Tua saying they're still having organizational issues. What? It's come on, you're halfway through the season. Guys have been here for 2-3 years. How can you still have personnel issues on what personnel package is going out there? How quickly the play gets to the huddle, those types of things. That's training camps type of stuff. And to me, it kind of points to these players have started to tune out Mike McDaniel, that they look and they say, all this talent that we've had, he's a 500 coach. We haven't won a playoff game. We had a losing record last year. We're going to have a losing record this year. And they start to lose faith in Mike McDaniel. Again, I think they like and respect him, but they're not going to be listening to him. That's the point that I think that we're at right now.
Well, I think the first sign of it to me was in Cleveland, of that, where, as you said, there were so many fundamental errors, pre-snap, effort. I don't know. The defense had effort after Judkins ran 10 times for 71 yards on them. But I will say the week before, let's be fair, the week before, they're down to the Chargers 13 points in the fourth quarter, and they come back and take the lead. So it's not, again, I don't think it wasn't a problem I noticed till last week when, just things were missing. Something was missing. Now, Teron Armstead, who was with the team the previous few years, said on a podcast after the Chargers game, there was none of that winning vibe that he's used to seeing from them. And let's face it, this is when you're 1-5, 1-6. This is when seasons sink and everybody points to somebody. And look, when Mike was winning in the first year and they were putting on a show the second year, he was quirky and funny and the unfootball coach that everybody thought this would be great if it works. Now he's just an oddball. And that's what happens when you lose. Yeah. All the good things that people say about you when you're winning, you get turned around, and the same things just don't work anymore. And from his different speech pattern to his outfits to just the way he conducts himself, now that's a bad thing now.
Yeah, it's the Ivy League education, the capri pants. It's all being used against him now by fans. The things that made him unique now are putting that big L on his forehead, and that's kind of the way it goes. He knows he signed up for this, though. That's the good thing about Mike. Mike McDaniel.
You're right.
Yeah, he has not sung the fans are so unfair song. He knows what he got into. He's taking it like a man, and I do have a certain amount of respect for that. So, Mike isn't acting like this is unfair or he's been caught off guard or been caught by surprise by this. He's very aware of what's going on here. So I will tip my hat to him for that. He hasn't tried to play the woe is me type of a card. Before we go on, let's say what's up to some of our viewers out here. Roger Ullman, 5884, what's up? Billy Batson Marvel, Peter McDowell, Tim Corey, Dead Streak, Ender Fireplace, YT 3306, Danny Martin, Rob, Peter McDowell. Everybody's in here. Phil Montgomery, a lot of our regulars are here. Bigote 1775, Miguel Machin 1870. Who else do we have here? Malby Crazy, of course. Welcome to everybody. You're fired up here. Jake Harris checking in here, 701. Jake Harris says the issue is that he is tone deaf. We've had banners flying over the stadium calling for change since week 2. Hyde, let me ask you this. If you're Stephen Ross, do you want to show the fans that they are so empowered, like with the banners? You've basically told them if you stop showing up, right, with the low attendance statement, that exception, that caveat, then that might urge a change. Is that healthy? Is that empowering fans to a scary degree, or is that showing, okay, I am aware, I am listening, I am paying attention?
Well, I think as an owner, you want to say you always listen to the fans. They're you're paying public and the people that ultimately you want on your side. But I would hope his loyalty is to the people he works with more. The people inside the Dolphins building and the facility, the coaches, the front office, everybody. And yeah, I've always said this. Well, look, when they were signing that big contract for Tua, when they spent the money on Ramsey and Tyreek, who's looking out for the organization? And I'll say that now, Ross is responsible for looking out for the organization. And you can fold all that into the fans looking out for people in the facility, all that. But ultimately, he's got to make his decision on what's best for the organization. And a lot of decisions haven't been made in recent years, big decisions on what's best for the organization.
Bigote 1775 asks, have players checked out due to Tua? I don't think that they have. Look, I think the Tua thing is a separate issue, and we're about to talk about Tua. But I don't think players have looked and said, well, Tua sucks, we're going to check out, he's not leading us anywhere. I don't think that players have said, Tua just made another tone-deaf statement, I'm out of here, I'm not listening to him. I think the Tua thing is separate than player effort. I don't see any link between the two. What about you, Hyde?
There's a crack here. Now, I don't know it's players, but let's just start with the most fundamental relationship, Mike and Tua. Tua comes out after the game and again says the organization's a problem. Guys are lining up wrong. We're not getting everybody in the right spot. Mike comes out yesterday and says, well, let's hope we don't throw 10 interceptions. I mean, these aren't normal phrases that head coaches and quarterbacks use in talking about in a tough time. Okay. And so something's going on here, and whether it's just people misspeaking as another issue around this team, or there's a big crack going down in relationships. I don't, that's something we're going to have to watch play out. But I wrote a column about this last week. Losing teams, it's like tight, intense telenovelas. I mean, people, you look at phrases, you walk in the locker room, someone says something, and people are digesting, and the other players digesting what was said, how it was said. We've been here many times before, and so they really need to be responsible for the words they're throwing out there.
Yeah, and I'll say this to put a bow on this segment before we go into our next one. I talked to a defensive player in the locker room last week, and I said, I know you guys don't want to make excuses, but could this be a factor that it feels like a lot of elements of this defense were thrown together at the last minute when you consider the secondary and you look at the defensive front? And he looked at me and he thought about it for a second. He goes, it's not an excuse, but yeah, you could be right. That might be the best way to phrase it, that it's a factor, but it's not an excuse. So I think players are becoming more aware of the hand that they were dealt here, and they are seeing it as a factor, but not the reason that they are 1-6. Let's head over into our next segment, and it's what's happened with Tua. And you mentioned the kind of the back and forth between Tua and Mike McDaniel. Here's the other thing that, the Anthony Weaver comment of last Thursday when I asked Weave, I noticed that he was a little sullen and downtrodden. Weave is like Mr. Positivity. And I asked him, how are you doing personally? And are you worried about your reputation as a head coaching prospect? And we went under this big tangent about, I'm in it to help players and not to make money. I'm in this to help players. I don't care about my head coaching prospects, and we need to focus on what we can do to get better and, blah, blah, blah. And then in the middle of it, he said, I know I've held coaches only meetings where coaches didn't show up. And he laughed and he said, I'm just kidding. Tua is our quarterback. I love him. I didn't quite know how he meant that. And I didn't have a chance to really go into it with players in the locker room. You can guarantee I'm going to prod around on that tomorrow. But when we ask what's happened with Tua, the coaching staff are they starting to kind of lose the Tua invincibility that we can take some public shots at Tua? The public sees that this guy is not that good. Is that what's going on here, do you think, Hyde?
We have to walk that line between, they still should be allowed a sense of humor and sometimes
Right.
dark humor or
Correct.
in a losing season. And that's what I took that as. Now,
Me too. That's how I
Mike's
portrayed it.
statement about as long as we don't throw 10 interceptions or something like that is like, oh, that's hitting a little closer to home of maybe that's not how a head coach should sound. All I would say is, especially in losing seasons, guys got to watch their words and not so much because how the media's going to take but how it's going to play out inside the team. And we saw that last week with Tua talking about players only meetings and players being late and they had to put out fires because of that. And yeah, I get it. Nobody, the national media, local media, put that up, but also inside the team is the real issue for having to put out fires.
Yeah, it is. We want to say what's up to Louis M727, J Charles, C Dola. I saw something on here. Oh, Lofi Anime is back with us. Who have we got here? K.A. Runs, 9,500. I'm sorry, I'm butchering this. There was something here that I wanted to read, and it was about in Tua We Trust, or what was it here? Gosh, I lost it here, and I was wondering if this. Okay, Luis Felipe Benito, Greer and McDaniel will turn it around, and Tua We Trust. I don't know if that's serious. I think that it is. And there's another one here that says Greer needs more time. Be patient. I don't think that this is the voice of the total fan base, but do you think that this is a popular opinion that they can turn this thing around? Be patient, Hyde. Is that the opinion with? Yeah, and is that the opinion with two? I'm trying to determine if I think it's sarcastic.
Did you see Sunday's game? Be patient. Are you? I mean, we crossed the threshold of patience at 0-3. Okay, 12 days into the season, that was panic button time. Okay, this is close your eyes and hope you open them, and it's next season time. Because at 1-6, the way they're playing, fundamental errors week after week after week, and a lot of the same glaring issues week after week. The run defense, for instance, getting praised a little this week, but they were going against the lowest scoring team in the NFL without their starting two tackles. And we're supposed to say, well, they even though they got run 10 times for 71 yards, after that they closed it down. They did. I mean, Cleveland closed it down. Cleveland got up 24-6 and said, we're not going to let this offense make any mistakes that could possibly lose the game, because we know the Dolphins aren't going to score more than 24 points on our defense. So I don't know how I got off on that rant, Perk. I don't remember what the question was, but this, I'm going down blind alleys these days.
That's fine. That's fine. I was wondering if the sentiment from Luis Felipe Benito was real, or if there was some sarcasm there about supporting Tua and supporting the team.
It's only 6 years into Tua. You're right. Let's
right.
Let the kid grow up. Let him grow up.
Let me say this about Tua, and I'll say this and then I'll go into my statement. So we know Tua has 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and a lost fumble. So that's 11 touchdowns and 11 turnovers. His 82.8 passer rating ranks 27th in the league. In defense of Tua, which, as you say, it's been 6 years. He needs no defense. But the play calling, you could say, is limited. There's no Tyreek. Darren Waller, who might not play this week due to a pectoral injury, has been shut down for stretches. Like half of a game, he gets no targets. Tua does not have a number one wide receiver, right? I think Jalen Waddle is showing us that he's a good number two, but he's not a number one. Anybody can have the title of number one. Devontae Parker had the title of number one receiver, but you've got to live up to it and move the chains and be a difference maker. There's injuries on the offensive line. Pretty much Tua only has Devon Achane going for him offensively, right?
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Paul, I guess, Aaron Brewer, but he doesn't have much going for him. Does that excuse Tua? Does that buy him any time in any way? I don't think it does. I think you've got to show that you can move the offense. Now, I wouldn't expect, Tom Brady wouldn't be able to lead this offense into the playoffs, but he's got to show us something more than he's shown us. Where are you with Tua right now?
Well, I'm fine if people want to criticize the roster and go across the board of they've been on, it's mixed. Unfortunate again with injuries, bad roster construction, and at the same time, when you pay the guy when he's in the $50 million club for a franchise quarterback, they're expected to be able to lift up players and at times and often. You saw Justin Herbert did it. Justin Herbert, they were on their fourth and fifth tackle. Do we have to go over this? Fourth and fifth tackle without their top receiver. On their practice squad running backs, and somehow he makes the winning play. So this is now, to be fair, Tua did make winning plays the previous 2 weeks. Okay.
Yep.
So this isn't all awful Tua. Now he's all awful. Everything's bad. Everything about Tua is bad. No, but not enough is good, I would say.
Right.
What you've noticed from Tua is in the right offense against the right defense, he can be very, very effective. But his limitations, you got to live with his limitations. He can't move, so you need a great offensive line or at least something to give him some time. And this is a game that more and more you look how teams win. It's guys out of chaos plays, and that's not his game. So, he really shouldn't be as bad as he was in Cleveland, no matter how good that defense was, and it was very good. So the previous two weeks up and down, but you're looking at a 12 to 18 ranked or 14 to 20th ranked quarterback in the league, I would think.
Yeah, he's definitely middling and getting worse. Peter McDowell says Tua is a terrible leader with no accountability, but at least he gets to go home and play with his kids and count his millions. There's let me read this other one before I get a comment from you on that. This one a little more positive from Merman78. Hey Dave, Hyde, I met you in Cleveland back in 2011. Miami lost that game as well, but you were a gentleman. Appreciate your work. So there's that. That's something positive. Now let's get back to Tua, which isn't very positive. What do you expect from Tua in these situations that we know that Jonas Avainaya is not coming through for him? James Daniels is gone. As we said, Tyreek is gone. There's not much to work with. The run defense is terrible. Like, you don't have a chance to give yourself a chance if you're Tua. Special teams errors. They're allowing a 90-yard kickoff return in one game, and then this game, Malik Washington, who has been good, loses a fumble on a kickoff. What is Tua expected to do? I'll answer this first. I'm expecting Tua to play fairly error-free football and set an example. Like, be the guy, be the rock. Like, you might not be able to lead this team to victory, but show them this is what we've practiced and this is how it should look in games, as opposed to throwing 3 interceptions in back-to-back games. That's what I expect from Tua, some veteran leadership. What's realistic for Tua to show under these circumstances, Hyde?
Well, I mean, there's a starting point. You can't make – a lot of times quarterbacks aren't defined by the great plays the best play, but by the worst play they make. And the past couple of weeks, Tua's been defined in the days by the bad plays he's made. And especially this past one, they come out at halftime, first play. You try to regroup. You get a field goal right before half. So somehow you're only down 11 points when they really got dominated in the half, and you get the ball, and certainly I'm sure you're thinking you're going to regroup at halftime and come out. You get a score there, you're right back in it. And first play makes a really bad throw, and it's just the type of throw where you wonder, can he make that throw? It's outside the zip on the ball, which isn't his game. It's a wet day. Did that then we get into the weather, and he threw it high. HN, it ticked off his fingers. I got people commenting he should have caught it. There's no way he's going to catch that ball. It was unfortunate it tipped off his fingers, which slowed it down to be intercepted and run back for a touchdown. But those are the type of plays. Maybe he's not going to throw or have the talent around him to throw 80-yard bombs anymore. But you can't be making those type of plays that lose the day for you.
Yeah, I agree. Here's one from boy, I'm going to butcher this. Pete N 1B says, "I'm quitting this team if Greer is still here next year. Lifelong fan here." Hyde, and this isn't directly on Tua, but this is just overall. Where do you think the fan base is as far as the long-term fans? Because I'm getting a lot of emails from people who say that they're longtime fans and they're getting turned off by this. And then you go to social media and you see the fans. I'm talking about emails from fans that are 50 years old and older. And then you go to social media and you see the fans that are like 40 and younger, and it's just four-letter words and curses to the Dolphins. I understand with the young fans, there's going to be frustration. I'm more worried about the older fans. Which fan group do you think is more incensed, and which should Stephen Ross and the Dolphins be more concerned with?
Well, as I saw, I'm an older, aging, badly guy, and people write me, "Do you think they'll win in my lifetime?" And I always answer, "Eat your vegetables." Because it might be a while. You better hope you have a long life. It's tough being a Dolphin. When we're talking about Tua, when he made that comment about fans last year eating on the couch with a potato chip, it's easy to do that. And I said, it's not easy if you're a Dolphin fan. Trust me, it's not easy through the years. It's a tough job being a Dolphin fan, I don't know. Where does this season rank among Dolphin fans? Tough ones. That could be a parlor game. What Ross has to do is make good football decisions. The fan noise is going to be good when you win, bad when you lose, and awful in seasons like this. I get it, but they just need to make organizationally some good football decisions moving forward, because he really hasn't made any in his time, and Tua is part of that. Tua is part of that decision. What are they going to do with it?
Right. And look, that's going to lead us right into our next segment. And the next segment is, when should the franchise look ahead? And Dave, I could go on forever, and this is going to be probably a lengthy segment, but I think the Dolphins need to clean house. Greer gone, McDaniel gone, Tua gone by the start of next season, or at the end of this season, let's say, to start the off season. They should be gone. You just take the financial pain with Tua. But here's the thing, Hyde. At some point this season, if you decide that you're going to clean house, do you bench Tua and play Quinn Ewers and or Zach Wilson? By the way, we'll get into that bizarre we got a battle for number 2 quarterback thing. Do you do that thinking we might have our bridge quarterback on the roster, or thinking that maybe that Zach Wilson is the next first round pick reclamation quarterback in the fashion of Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield? Do you Do you give the backup quarterbacks a look either because they could be a bridge quarterback or because they could be your quarterback of the future? Do you bench Tua and start looking ahead at 1-8 or 2-7?
Well, that will come. First of all, you have to fire McDaniel because Tua is his guy. He's and McDaniel, rightfully so, wants to win as many games as he can, and so he's going to put. The problem with replacing Tua, we're not seeing the practices now. Okay,
Right.
if you put in a worse quarterback than Tua and Zach Wilson, I thought they got him to be that reclamation project, but he's not working out obviously because they made him the third quarterback. Or Quinn Ewers, if they don't look good in practice, or they don't look up to Tua, then you lost the players too because they're saying, "Oh, you're putting in a guy who we can't win with. He's not our best chance to win." So there's the danger there. I get fans saying, "Just play Quinn Ewers because we're tired of Tua." Well, there's a lot more factors going into this, and the main one to me is the rest of the team. You're telling the rest of the team when you put in a guy who can't win, then you really have lost the team at that point.
Yeah, and what I think is probably going to happen here is that Tua probably will play out the whole season, but if you're turning the page, I do wonder where you start at turning the page, and so are you gonna have a fire sale? Here's what I think at the trade deadline.
People say that, Kirk. Who do you fire? Who's out there that teams want?
Correct.
I mean, there's
I
like
agree.
2 players on this roster that or 3. If you Patrick Paul, you're not going to trade him.
Nope. It's basically Bradley Chubb.
What do you get for Bradley Chubb? If you watch his play, he's not anything near what he was, and so
no.
I mean, what are you going to get for these guys? That Jalen Phillips. I say if Jalen Phillips signs a contract after the season, you get a compensatory pick for him, right?
Right.
And so
right.
It'd have to be more than a 3rd round pick, essentially, or 4th round, however you play the financial game. So what are we talking? Jalen Waddle? I'm not sure.
I think Chubb is the only one who would have any value out there because he's a guy who has had double-digit sack seasons. But look, with Jalen Phillips, you've got a guy who's coming off of 2 injured seasons, who has never been to a Pro Bowl, who has never had a double-digit sack season, and he's going to need a contract. You're not going to give up on Devon Achane. You're not going to give up on Jalen Waddle. You're not giving up on Chop or Patrick Paul, none of those guys. There's not a whole lot of talent here to have a fire sale because you're not getting more than 4th round pick optimistically for anybody that you're going to give up on. So I do wonder what is going to be the overarching plan. And I'm probably going to write this during the week for the rebuild. To me, I would want to start the rebuild in the trenches. And the reason why is because that's where your biggest draft capital has gone the last 2 years, right? With Chop, Patrick Paul, Kenneth Grant, and Jonas Avayanaya, draft and develop, do it in the trenches. And then when you come across your quarterback, whether it's Jalen Hurts or Jared Goff, you don't have to draft a quarterback number 1 to have the quarterback, right? We just talked about Baker and Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold. Jalen Hurts, not a 1st round quarterback. I think the Detroit and the Philadelphia models are much wiser as far as building through the trenches and making sure that part of the team is taken care of. And then you come back and you try to find your quarterback, as opposed to, well, we got the number 2 pick in the draft. Let's draft Arch Manning and just tell everybody that he's the best quarterback out there. Like, that doesn't work. So I just recognizing that you've spent so much draft capital the last couple of years in the trenches, draft and develop. Now, I'm not saying Avayanaya is going to be the best offensive lineman you have. Maybe he's your 5th starter as far as quality. but you got Patrick Paul, and so build it like that. See what Kenneth Grant turns into. He doesn't look like a Hall of Famer through 7 games, but he's also not somebody you're going to give up on after one season. So draft and develop, and make sure that your next GM and your next head coach understand what you've invested in the draft the last couple of years, and they agree with you. Do you think that the rebuild should start in the trenches, or do you start it off with speed like you did this year? Do you try to find the quarterback? What do you think should be the plan for the rebuild?
Well, you can say let's rebuild in the trenches. I don't disagree with that. I get where you're coming from, but you also have to be cognizant of if you have the third or fourth pick in the draft and there's a quarterback you like there, that who you think he can be special.
Yes,
you got to take him. I mean, you can't just
right.
have this.
Right.
Here's
right.
how we're going to do it, and 2 years from now we'll find a quarterback. You got to be fluid, and that's why the first decision for Ross, after assuming he's going to keep the team and not sell it, is who he puts in charge and how he structures it, and that will become. People say, "Oh, you got to get the coach or you got to get the GM." You know what? You got to get the person. Whoever the person is that has the talent, it could be the coach, it could be, but it could be a GM. Jim Harbaugh and Mike Vrabel were available the last 2 years, and there's no obvious guy sitting there that just looks like a home run. That I've talked to people about, anyways, and so. But with I can't. My tongue stumbles over having to say the word rebuild again. But I break out in hives when I say that. It's like, how many times do we use that? But here we go again, and I get what you're saying about rebuilding the trenches, but it just can't be set in concrete, because if you have a chance for a special quarterback, you got to take that quarterback, even if you don't have the line set up yet.
Yeah. I would say don't force the quarterback decision. Don't feel obligated to get the quarterback, because from what we know right now about the quarterbacks coming out, there might not be a franchise quarterback in this draft, or one that the Dolphins want to pick, in the top 5 picks or whatever. So. I would say stay loose, but that's the idea that I'm going in with, is that I've invested my first and second round picks in the trenches the last couple of years. I'm going to draft and develop. Here's another question for you, Hyde. Head coach, do you go with somebody who's experienced, or do you go the route that they've gone since Dave Wanstead and hire first-year head coaches, first-time head coaches? Let me throw out some names for you. Coaches with previous head coaching experience. What about Mike McCarthy? What about Cliff Kingsbury, who is Washington's offensive coordinator? Matt Nagy, who is Kansas City's offensive coordinator. Kingsbury was head coach in Arizona, didn't do well. None of these guys did especially well. Matt Nagy was head coach in Chicago. What about Arthur Smith, the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive coordinator, head coach in Atlanta? What about Vance Joseph, Denver's defensive coordinator, former Dolphins defensive coordinator? He was Denver's head coach. If you want to go with first-timers, what about Joe Brady, the Buffalo offensive coordinator? He's a local kid, right? He went to Everglades High School in Miramar. What about Josh Broussard, the Tampa Bay offensive coordinator? He grew up in the Dolphins system. He was a long-time Dolphins offensive quality control coach. What about Todd Monken, Baltimore's offensive coordinator? If you want to go defense, what about Anthony Weaver? I know. His defense is not doing well. Or what about Chris Shula, the Los Angeles Rams defensive coordinator? You know that name. Do any of those names?
What about Brian?
What's that? Well, I thought about putting his name on the list, but I thought better of it. As long as Steve Ross is here, I'm thinking that's probably not going to happen. But who knows? Do any of those names grab you, or does a philosophy, you've got to go with an experienced head coach, you want to go offense, you want to go defense, or just best man for the job no matter what?
What about Lane Kiffin?
What about him? I mean,
let's talk about what they need to do. The exact guy. I just think it's too early for that for me. but again, how is Steve Ross going to set it up? Where the
Right,
GM,
right, right.
that factors in. Look at the GMs. There are a handful of GMs that people are starting to name, um, or talk about, anyways, in football circles. One of them is Howie Roseman's assistant, who happens to be the twin brother of the Browns general manager. So Barry.
Yep, yep.
So
Andrew Berry.
again, here's my question: for did they do they have a list? Have they? And I've talked about this. I would go into UM's athletic directors for years, and a couple
Yes,
of them would have a list of the top three
yes.
or five coaches they're going to hire if their coach left today. Has
Yep,
Steve Ross or somebody kept a list? Like, do they have it? They should. They go to league
yep.
meetings. They go to all these NFL functions. They should know who's the hot or who's making decisions. But beyond all this, what they need is a guy who can stand up and the first thing, and this is where Steve Ross always has made a fundamental mistake. They need someone who can stand up in front of a team and command the room. That simple thing is just the starting point of what you need. You got to have someone who can get up there and put out an aura of strength and togetherness and leadership and all these intangibles. We've all been in businesses, and you've seen people like that, people who have it and people who don't, and there's a difference, right, in how you respond.
Right.
So, but especially in this business, I think Steve Ross has undervalued the idea of leadership.
Yeah, yeah, and I would agree. I think Flo was a leader,
Yes.
but he had people skill. He had people skill issues. But but you're right. And Weaver is a leader and somebody that players respond to. But his defense has just been putrid this year. But I do think that players respond to him. There's just so many. It should just be easy, right, Hyde? This is the guy.
Well,
This is the next
for
Bill
instance,
Belichick. But it's
give
not.
I'll give you this anecdote. Joe Philbin. I asked Steve what he liked about Joe Philbin. This was like a year after he hired. What would you see? And he goes, he was very organized in the interview with his PowerPoint. And I'm thinking, well, that's nice, but I get that. That's very nice. He keeps a clean desk. I guess that's nice. But what does that have to do with the job? And so, I'm not saying commanding a room is the be all end all, but it's the starting point. You got to be able to do that. That's one of the fundamental pillars of coaching in pro sports that you got to be able to do. There are others, but that's one of them.
Right. Yeah, yeah, I agree. You've got to have a presence, and so I don't think that that's necessarily, that definitely is not Mike McDaniel, definitely not Joe Philbin, but I do wonder when to get back to the list of coaching candidates. That's a very old school thing. Way back in the day when I used to cover TCU, they had an athletic director, Frank Windigger, and he used to always say, "I've got in my desk a list, an actual list of 3 names. If my guy was Pat Sullivan was their coach back then, but if Pat Sullivan left, these are the guys that I would call." I don't know if that's too old school for Steve Ross to have, but I do think that that's something
maybe
great
not
to
even
have.
maybe not even a written, just mentally. Oh, I'm hearing a lot
Yeah,
about
just
this
mentally,
guy.
right?
Because we knew, everybody talked about this was a possibility this season, right? That the ship
Right.
would sink, and so certainly if I'm the owner, I'm hoping it doesn't happen. But at the same time, I'm keeping my ears open and I'm doing a little investigation work on who some guys are as the season goes on, and just keep my eyes open. And we talked about why you would make a change. One of the reasons you make a change is then you can openly look for the next coach, next GM. As it is, you can't really ethically call up a coach and say, "Hey, I want to talk to you about the Dolphins job," when already Mike McDaniel. Now, Steve Ross did that with Jim Harbaugh and Tony Soprano. But the point being, a lot of coaches aren't going to take your phone call until you've moved on from whoever's there.
Let me ask you this, Dave. What do you think about the talent that a new coach and new GM would be walking into? And so let's throw out some names here that from right now, you would have Tua, you would have Achan, you would have Ollie Gordon, you would have Aaron Brewer, Patrick Paul, Jonas Vainaya, Austin Jackson, Jalen Waddle on the other side of the ball, and Malik Washington on the other side. Let's say Jalen Phillips, Chop Robinson, Jordan Brooks, Terrell Dodson, Minka Fitzpatrick, Storm Duck, Cater Kohu. I mean, if you inherited that talent.
Is there a Pro Bowl player in the bunch? We're not even talking all pro.
No.
Certainly not talking Hall. No. Is there a Pro Bowl player in the bunch?
No.
I don't think so. I don't see it. So you're talking.
I mean, potential.
Yeah.
Potentially.
You want to talk good news this year? It's Patrick Paul. Okay. Achan we saw last year really emerge, and he's continued.
Right.
But if you want to talk good news, there it is, Patrick Paul. That's your good news for the roster this year. The rookie class has shown nothing. That doesn't mean there'll be nothing a year from now. But nobody through almost half a season has done really anything. And just the reverse, they've looked very exposed and in over their heads in a lot of cases. So you're looking at one of the worst rosters in the league again.
So if you're Steve Ross or Tom Garfinkel, the president of business operations, who we think might have something to do with the head coaching search, when you're sitting in that interview across the table from a head coaching prospect and you say, here's the talent you're bringing back, what's your 3-year plan? Where is this organization going to be in 3 years? What do you want to hear realistically, knowing what you have on this roster? Do you want them to blow smoke up your butt and say, I'll have you in the Super Bowl in 3 years. I'll have you in the playoffs in 3 years. I'll have a playoff victory in 3 years. To me, the 3-year plan is big because windows aren't open for long. You get injuries, players get more expensive, right? In 3 years, you're going to have to start thinking, boy, Achan has got a lot of years on him. Patrick Paul is going to need a new contract. Jonah wants a new contract. You got to start thinking about Chop and Cater and Storm. Well, no, just
Jonah better worry about just developing and not thinking about new contracts right now, right?
But where are you going? So, like in 3 years, what do you want to hear from that coaching? Do you want them to blow smoke up your butt, and will that be encouraged? Yeah, we'll be in the Super Bowl. Look at this talent; I can turn it around. Or do you want them to tell you, well, we'll probably be a 9-8 team in 3 years? Is that satisfactory? What do you want to hear realistically?
Yeah, I don't think any coach is going to say, "Oh, we'll be in the Super Bowl in 3 years." You want to go old school? Don Shula came in, and they asked him his plan. What's your 5-year plan? He said, 5-year plan? I don't have a 5-year plan. I have a plan for tomorrow and the next day, and the next day we're going to work. And what I really want to know from all the candidates, what's your philosophy of football? How do you win? Jim Harbaugh came into the Chargers, and he invested in 2 tackles. Now, they were hurt against the Dolphins, but that was his idea of how you're going to win in football. You're going to build the line, invest in the line. Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer, I still, 10 years in running the draft, I have no idea what he thinks winning football looks like. I don't. He just bends to whatever the coach is and all that. So that'd be the first thing I'd want to be beyond, your 5-year plan or whatever. Okay, how do you see winning football, what it looks like? Okay. These guys built with speed. Flores built with, building a tough team. Team. Adam Gase built with, he wanted creative offense. Joe Philbin, I don't know what he did. Tony Sprono wanted the Bill Parcells way of a tough, big, strong team, big lines. So, I mean, that'd be a starting point, I think.
Yeah. I would want to know what they want to do, but I want to know where they would have this franchise in 3 years. Because if you don't, to me, you can't just say, we got a plan for tomorrow. That's not good enough. I want to know, what can you realistically do with this roster? What do you see happening and why? How are you going to get the roster to that place? But what is your football philosophy is a great point that you would have to have a definition on that. Do you believe in winning with the through the trenches? Do you believe that you have to get the quarterback first? Are you going to go with speed over toughness? Those kinds of things. I'll ask you this also before we get into our picks for this week. How much do you want to build through the draft with this? Because we saw with this last rebuild, you made some wrong choices, right? And you always point to Jalen Waddle over Penei Sewell. In a few years, we might be saying Kenneth Grant over Tyler Warren. We see a lot of these misses. They took Noah Igbenogany. You did have some good stuff, right? You did take Tua, and you didn't take Justin Herbert. I know. You did take Austin Jackson. I know he's been injured. I'm trying to give these guys some credit here. It wasn't a total disaster, but you ended up most of your success came from free agents, right? From Teron Armstead and Tyreek and
anybody
Bradley Chubb.
And anybody could look out and say, Tyreek's a great receiver. Here's all the money you want, Tyreek. Here's all the draft picks you want.
Take the draft picks.
That's fantasy football.
Yeah.
Right, but you're right. So, serious football decisions they were lacking. So you got to build with the draft. You don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. You have to build with the draft, especially when you have two on the books for $50 million or whatever, $38 million. I think it actually comes down to, and there's some accounting that has to be done in there, but. You absolutely have to build with the draft. Even if you decide we're going to invest in free agency, you have to build with the draft. You need young players, you need inexpensive players, and guys who grow up in your system, whatever your system is.
Yeah, and I think Detroit is a good example of that. The way that they've done it. I mean, obviously they didn't draft Jared Goff, but you look at the other draft picks, even somebody as simple as like Jack Campbell at linebacker. We know about Sam Laporta and Penei Sewell and Jahmyr Gibbs, but yeah, there's just a lot of just rank and file good NFL football players, guys who are never going to make a Pro Bowl, but they're going to be starters on your team for 3-4 years. That's why, and it's cheap labor. It represents cheap labor, and that's why you need to build through the draft, because that's the way to do it. It takes years, but that's the best way to do it. All right, Dave Hyde, we have come to our final segment here. Dolphins at Atlanta Falcons, Sunday, 1 o'clock. Who you got?
Well, I'm wrestling with, do I want to be funny and I'm going to pick the Dolphins every game the rest of the way, or do I want to be serious? And are you kidding me? This is like a brutal matchup for the Dolphins, okay?
Yeah,
again, Bijan Robinson and that offensive line.
Right.
It could
Drake London.
It could really, if past is prologue, it could be ugly for the Dolphins that way. And then you have a very good defense, very fast and physical defense. Atlanta. You talk about a team that's changed. That last year their defense was awful. This year it's really good, and that tells you with some make a few really good personnel decisions, you can turn things around quickly in this league. So, but back to I'm trying to talk my way out of picking Atlanta, but I'd have to pick Atlanta, and I'll go 27-14.
Wow, that's pretty close to what I'm taking. I'm taking Atlanta 28-17, and I think I'm being generous by giving the Dolphins 2 touchdowns. Maybe they get a special teams touchdown or a defensive touchdown, but I agree with you, especially if Darren Waller doesn't play, and it looks like he's not going to play from what Mike McDaniel told us yesterday. Boy, I just don't know how they're going to generate enough offense to be able to make a difference, especially as you say, you've got to stop Bijan Robinson and that offensive line. The Dolphins' run defense is just terrible. So that leads you to think either they're going to have to stop the Atlanta run game and score quickly, or they're going to have extended drives and keep Atlanta's offense off the field. I don't see either of those scenarios happening. Let me ask you this, Dave Hyde, because we are talking about long shots and all that kind of stuff. What do you think happens at backup quarterback? And if Tua goes down this week, is it Quinn Ewers or Zach Wilson? And do either of them give the Dolphins a chance to win? And what's going on with this backup quarterback? That last week it's not permanent. A backup quarterback gives you a matchup specific advantage. Like Quinn Ewers gave you a better chance to beat Cleveland. None of this backup quarterback stuff makes sense, but where are you if a backup quarterback has to appear this week? Do you have a chance to win? Who should it be?
Unless this was a message sent to Zach Wilson for something he did or didn't do or whatever, I guess I just have to take it at face value that Mike thought Quinn Ewers gave them a better chance to win at this point from what he's seen than Zach Wilson. I mean, that's what it has to be, right? And Mike McDaniel talked afterward. It made no sense that Quinn Ewers matches up better against Cleveland if we needed him than Zach. It's like, what are you talking about? I just have to take it at face value. They've seen better stuff out of Quinn Ewers than Zach. Now, Quinn got in the game and first pass almost picked off. He didn't show anything that now that's a tough situation to go in and all. We can make it excuses, but you got to take advantage of whatever opportunity you have when you're in that position. If there's something there, you want to see a glimmer of a good throw, a athletic move, something, and really I saw nothing.
Yeah. I like this from Dean Rodriguez, 4746. Just out of curiosity, Perk, still think we're an 8-win team? Asking for a friend. Well, I picked the Dolphins to be a 9-win team out of accuracy, for the sake of accuracy. But
I picked them to be 8. I had 8.
Oh, there you go. See, you had a better read on this team than me, Hyde. Yeah.
And I have to admit, I was being optimistic. I thought, I'd go down the roster, the schedule, and I really didn't see a collapse of this proportion coming.
Right. Yeah, I thought if the starters stayed healthy, you knew the backups weren't going to be any good. I thought if the starters stayed healthy, based on what the team did last year, 8 wins with Tua missing 6 games, right? Then you could scratch out 9 wins if Tua played, 13 or 14 games. I thought the front 7 was going to lead the way. I was just wrong on all counts. I admit that. It's obvious. Even if I didn't admit it, I would have to admit it, right? Because it's obvious.
You're right, Perk. The surprise of the season really is the front 7 on defense, and
front 7,
and it tells you that those were serious injuries. Those 2, guys who are really good veterans, and Chubb and Phillips haven't come back. Phillips is playing decently. I think he's playing fine, not great, not the trajectory he once had, but that front 7. The linebacking core, I thought it was decent, and just don't see it.
Yeah. Here's a stat that Alan Coupart, who we both done his podcast, covers the Dolphins for SI.com. I believe Miami Dolphins on SI.com. He tells us that Jordan Brooks was leading the league with 66 tackles before last week. 44% of those tackles happened with gains of 8 yards or more. So I think it was 29. Stat. Right, 29 of the 66, 8 yards or more. I mean, what kind of mess is that? Stat. I mean, that is a great stat, and it's just like you talk about the failure of the front 7 and the failure of this defense, and so I do wonder a lot what in the world is going on when you add up the backup quarterback and this 3-game losing streak with Carolina and the Chargers and Cleveland and the stuff that you say with Tua and McDaniel and Anthony Weaver chiming in with the coaches meetings where coaches don't show up. It just makes you wonder what in the world is going on over there. In talking to players, I have not heard, even off the record, of evidence of this thing as, there's a lot of infighting and all that kind of stuff. This team has always had a good fighting spirit. I've always said that. They don't quit. They don't give up. The fact is, they just aren't very good. And so that's kind of the bottom line. And what's becoming more apparent now is they don't seem to be coached well. And so that's when I get into the whole they're going to stop listening. And it makes me wonder what's going to happen this week at Atlanta, which is going to be the best team that you played in the last month, in the last 4 weeks. You're on the road where you never play well. And so that's what, to bring it back to why does Mike McDaniel still have a job? You factor all that stuff in, and I just wonder, is this going to be Mike McDaniel's last week in his current post?
Yeah.
Or does Steve Ross say, well, we only lost 24-20, let's stick with Mike? I wonder if margin and how the team looks is a factor in how long Mike McDaniel keeps this job.
Yeah, I think so, don't you? But I mean, he could have been fired every week from here on out until he is fired. Everybody will be asking, okay, should he be fired this week? Should he be fired this week? It's not a question of, the only question left is when does Steve decide to do it to him and Chris Greer? And I tell you what, the players, as much as I've been around losing teams and some of them are happy the coach is gone, a lot of them will be losing their jobs too because of new regimes coming in.
Yeah, that's it, man. All right, Dave Hyde, that's going to do it for this week's edition of Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. We will be back next week, Tuesday at noon. Be back with David Furones. That is Dave Hyde. I'm Chris Perkins. We appreciate you watching this week.